Baruchim Abayim, ladies. We are studying today Parashat Vayera. Our parasha begins with the recovery of Avraham Avinu after the circumcision, after the Brit Milah that he underwent at the end of last week's parasha. The Torah begins on the third day of his recovery. Kadosh Baruch Hu comes to visit Avraham. From here the Gemara learns that even the Almighty fulfills the mitzvah of Bikur Cholim. God visited Avraham, he was sick, so he paid him a visit. Avraham Avinu was sitting at the opening of his tent. Our rabbis explain that the reason why he was sitting at the tent opening, although God was with him, but he was looking for guests to invite. He was very hospitable, Avraham Avinu, and he was enjoying being in the presence of God, but at the same time wanted to do chesed. So he's scanning the streets to see if anybody is walking that he can invite them in. Eventually he would see three what appeared like men. It would turn out that those three men would be three angels. They would come to the tent of Avraham and they would promise Avraham good news. First, they cured him. That was the angel called Raphael. Raphael is the angel in charge of healing. So he gave Avraham Avinu refuah shlema. There was also the angel Michael, where he promised that Sarah Imenu would have a baby. It was the bearer of good news. Keep in mind, Sarah was at that age 90 years old, and Avraham was 99. And Avraham only had a child from Hagar, but he did not have a child from his primary wife Sarah. So that was promised to them as well by that angel. The third angel actually went from the house of Avraham and would go to Sodom. And in Sodom, he would be the angel in charge of destroying Sodom. Sodom was a city of evildoers. They were the Sha'im. There was no tzaddikim to be found in the city, so the angel would go and destroy Sodom. There was a great rabbi called the Chidushei Harim. He asks a very simple question. His question is, I understand why the angel that came to tell Sarah she's going to have a baby had to come to Abraham's house. It's clear. He wants to give her the good news. And it's clear why the angel of healing came to Abraham's house to cure him. But the angel that went to destroy Sodom, let him go destroy Sodom. What does he have to make a pit stop at Avraham Avinu's house for? Why was that important? Furthermore, when you read this story, there's one pasuk that stands out more than others. When the angels enter Avraham Avinu's house, of course they acquiesce to receive his hospitality, and they come into the tent, and all of a sudden they ask Avraham a very personal question. Vayomeru elav. They tell him, Ayeh Sarah ishtecha. Where's your wife Sarah? Avraham answers. Avraham Avinu says, Vayomer ineh ba'ohel. She's in the tent. Now, I don't know about you, but if a stranger would come into my house, and the first question he asks me is, where's your wife? So I would call the police. What kind of questions? What's in your business where my wife is? You came in for a cup of coffee and some food. And Abraham Avinu answers, as if Abraham Avinu was not bothered by the question. Where is your wife Sarah? Instead of saying, mind your own business, he tells him, oh, in Eba oil, she's in the tent. So I'd like to explain this story, again, in the spirit of the way the Hadushei Harim says, with a few little additions that we might not have said in previous years. But in order to understand this story that took place, you need to understand a Gemara. The Gemara is in Yevamot. I'll teach it to you. It's worthy anyway for you to know this Gemara. The Gemara says that they were looking for somebody to fight Goliath. Goliath was a big giant. At the time, the king of Israel, his name was Shaul HaMelech. And there was a young man, a tzaddik, his name was David. Eventually he would become David HaMelech. He volunteered. He said, I'll kill Goliath. And sure enough, with his slingshot, he went and he hit a bullseye right in the forehead, and he knocked Goliath dead. The Gemara says that when they were dressing David HaMelech in his armor, they dressed him in special armor, so he could protect himself when he goes out to war. And they noticed that when he put on the armor, it fit him perfectly. And there was a tradition that whoever fits into this armor will eventually become the king of Israel. So they started to get suspicious. When they looked at David and they looked at the armor, they said, no way it'll fit him. When they put it on, it was as if it was custom made. So in the Bet Midrash, they started to discuss, hey, who was this David? They said, well, he comes from the right tribe. Because the tribe of kingdom, the Torah says, is Yehudah. And David comes from Yehudah. So it could be. So the rabbis asked, but wait, Yehudah had two sons. He actually had twin boys. One was Peretz, and one was Zerach. And the tradition was that if you come from Zerach, from that line, so you become princes. But if you come from Peretz, you become kings. So they had to figure out which one of the twins does David descend from, if he has blue blood in him or not. And sure enough, they did an investigation on the family tree, and they saw he comes from Peretz. So far so good. He's come from Yehudah, he's got the Peretz blood in him. So they were talking in the Bet Midrash about maybe David eventually becoming the first king of the dynasty, which would eventually be called the Davidic dynasty. This is like a behind-the-scenes story before they made David the king. Anyway, in the middle of the discussion, a rabbi walked into the yeshiva. His name was Doeg. Doeg Ha'adumi. They call him Doeg the red one. Not because he had red hair or not because he was ready, that he had red cheeks. They called him the red one because anybody that got into an argument with him would come out red. He would embarrass them. Not embarrass them, humiliate them, meaning he was so smart that you couldn't win an argument with him. It's like when you have two people in a debate. He would always win the debate. And the one that he was arguing against would just walk away, with red face. So whenever he would walk into the Bet Midrash, the rabbis knew, be careful, here comes the Eg Adomi. You have to be careful because he's very sharp. So he walked and he said, Rabotai, what's the discussion today in the yeshiva? What are they talking about? So, we're talking about this young man, David. What's the discussion? Well, he might become the next king of Israel. Yeah. So yeah, because we figured it out. Yehudah, he's got it. Peretz, he's in. So Doeg says, well, I think you're a little ahead of yourselves. Before you discuss whether he should be the king of Israel or not, why don't you discuss if he's Jewish or not? And they were shocked. What would they be? Discuss if he was Jewish or not? What kind of question is that, if he's Jewish or not? Everybody knows he comes from a Jewish family. That's not a discussion over here. His entry into the Jewish nation. So Doeg says, yes, it needs to be discussed. For the simple reason that David had a grandmother. His grandmother was called Ruth. As all of you know, Ruth was a convertess. Ruth was born not Jewish. She was born a full-fledged Goya. She came from the nation of Moab. Like you have Americans and you have Chinese and you have Moabim. So she was a Moabi. She had no Jewish blood in her. But at a certain stage in life, she decided to convert, and she became a full-fledged Jew. And she ends up becoming David's grandmother. Now that shouldn't bother too many people. So once she converts, she's Jewish. So if she's Jewish, that means her children are Jewish, and David's Jewish. Only problem is, Doeg reminds the rabbis in the yeshiva, that the Torah says, in an open pasuk, I mean you can't have it more open than that, it says that we're not allowed to accept converts from Moab. It says, Lo yavo Moavi b'kal Hashem. So therefore, Ruth was illegal in the first place, and therefore if she's illegal, all her descendants are illegal. So the rabbis were stunned. Whoa. But the rabbis right away had the answer. They said, well, Doeg, nice try, but we have a tradition. The tradition is that the men from Moab are not accepted if they convert, but the women are okay. It's a derash that they said, Moavi velo Moaviyah. I'll tell you the reason in a minute why that's true, if it's true, but that's what they told Doeg. The women are okay. It's the men that are banned. So Doeg says, oh yeah, that's a good one. You start making differences between men and women. You know, the Torah says we're not allowed to accept a mamzer. So you're going to tell me only men mamzerim, but female mamzerim are okay? I'm not going to explain to you what mamzer is. If you don't know it, you don't know it. But the point is, there's no difference. If a mamzer is asur, it doesn't matter, male or female. So the rabbis were stuck by that question. And they got to a point where they were about to announce that King David, he wasn't a king then, but this boy David is not only not fit to be king, but he's not Jewish, because his grandmother is illegal. All of a sudden, one of the rabbis walked in, another rabbi, Yitra Ishmaeli, doesn't matter who he is, he walks in, and he takes a sword, and he takes it out of his dagger, out of the holster. He thrusts it in the Bet Midrash. And he says, gentlemen, I have a tradition from the great prophet Shemuel that when the Torah says Moavi is forbidden, it's only the men and not the women. And anybody that wants to challenge this tradition, the sword will greet them. Okay, so you put it that way, nobody's going to argue. So the Gemara says, okay, you have a tradition, we're not fighting the tradition. But the Gemara goes on. Why should the men be forbidden and not the women? What's the reason? Well, let me ask you a better question. Why should the men be forbidden at all? What did these Moab people do that they become banned to join Judaism? So the Gemara goes on to tell us a story. This story happens to be written in the Torah as well. When the Jewish people came out of Egypt, we were in the desert for 40 years. And we were just traveling from place to place. And of course there's nations on the side of us, but we're in the desert. We weren't crossing any civilizations or any populated areas. Once in a while we'd cross by a populated area, and we'd send messages to them to ask them if they could provide us with water or food or snacks or stuff like that. And we always offered to pay. So it was a good deal. The nations would look forward to us coming by their nation. Imagine you have a soda machine, And all of a sudden you have 3 million people who are going to pass by your soda machine. And everybody buys 2 sodas. Do the math. And that's what happened with the Jewish people. There's 3 million people, and they pass by Moab, and they send a messenger to Moab, and they say, listen, we're willing to buy water, charge us whatever you want, and we're willing to buy food, and we need 3 million provisions. And Moab sends back, take a walk. We'd rather you die of starvation and dehydration. We won't even sell it to you. We're not interested. Die. Anti-Semites. Well, the truth is, they're not the first anti-Semites. If you start making a list of anti-Semites, you can go from A to Z. But God says, oh, you weren't good to the Jewish people, you didn't offer them provisions, you're not accepted. Yeah, but God, everybody hates us. If that's the case, we shouldn't accept converts from any nation. But God says, yeah, but they're different. These people are different. You know why they're different? Because you know who Moab's father is? Lot. I didn't tell you that, now I'm telling you that. Moab's father was a man called Lot. And Lot was in trouble. In this week's parasha we read that Lot was actually in Sodom when it was about to get destroyed. And it was Abraham, our father of the Jews, that risked his life and went and saved Lot. So, you Moabi nation, you wouldn't be around if it wasn't for us. Our father saved your father. Common decency says you have to reciprocate. So we're not asking you for $1 million. We're just asking you to sell us a glass of water. And you don't have the common decency to reciprocate. You don't feel obligated to do something for us. After all, you wouldn't be here if it wasn't for our father saving your father. And this is a great opportunity to pay back. So Moab weren't just textbook anti-Semites. They were ingrates. God says that's already too much. It's one thing to hate Jews, but to be so ungrateful for a favor that was done, and you don't know how to pay back. So God says, you are officially banned. Well, if they're banned, then it should apply to both men and women then. Why does it only apply to the men? So the Gemara says an amazing thing. Because it's the men's fault. They should have went out and served the water, and they should have went out and served the bread to the nation. Because it's not modest for the woman to have to go out and serve food to foreign men. So the ladies wearing, the Moabi women weren't really at fault. You can't blame them for not coming out to serve strange men. It's not proper. So the Gemara says, that's a good point. But the woman could have came out and served the woman. You can't say, oh, sini'ut. We don't want to give food to, men. It's not proper to have interaction. I agree with that. So why don't you go make the ladies section? Go serve the woman. So the Gemara says, no, even that is not so modest, really. Because it's really the way of woman in the proper, we'll call it the modest mode, the perfect modest mode. Ladies are more inside. They have more of a private, personal role. And therefore there's no claim against these Moabi women. Not only did they have to greet the men, that's for sure, but they didn't even have to go out and greet the women. It's more modest for a lady just to stay home, to be inside, and let the men handle the business. So that's why the Moabi women were not at fault. So the Gemara says, hold it, the Gemara says. Where do we know this concept? You're telling me a new concept now. The way of modest woman is to be inside, is to be enclosed, not to go out. So the Gemara says, you know what the proof is? Very good. I'll explain it. Don't get nervous. I'll explain it. A lot of times when I ask these questions, you don't have to answer them. They're rhetorical questions. I don't mind you answer them because usually you get the right answer anyway. But don't feel obligated to answer them. The Gemara says that they learned modesty from the mother, the matriarch Sarah Imenu. Because in this week's parasha, you remember when the angel said to Abraham, "Where is Sarah?" And what does he say? Hine ba'ohel. So the rabbis learned from that she was in the tent. Abraham was saying, "That's the way of my wife. She's always inside. She's low key. She doesn't go out." So the rabbis learned from Sarah Imenu that it's the way of ladies to be inside. And therefore, those Moavi women that didn't go out are okay. There's no claim against them. That's why female Moavi converts are okay. Therefore Ruth is okay. And therefore David is okay. That's the Gemara. Now you learned the Gemara. Congratulations. It's a long calculation. I don't say no. Now this is very important. You see, at this point when Abraham was recovering on the third day of his circumcision, he was in a place called Elonim Mamre, the plains of Mamre. That's in Israel. And a little distance away, closer to like Syria, Lot was in a place called Sedom. That's where Lot was. He moved to Sedom. And God already had made up his mind to destroy Sedom. As a matter of fact, one of those angels that came to visit Abraham was in charge of destroying Sedom. As I explained to you, eventually he would leave Abraham's house and go straight to Sedom to destroy Sedom. But that angel that was going to destroy Sedom had a question. It was actually a halachic question. Interesting, huh? Angels also have halachic questions. When you have a halachic question, you go to the rabbi. The chief rabbi in those days was called Abraham Avinu. Could you imagine that? The angels need to go to Abraham to ask Abraham a halachic question. To show you the angels are beneath Abraham. Abraham's higher than the angels. I'm wondering, what halachic question does an angel have? What, a drop of milk fell into the pot? What's his question? What can an angel want to know halachically? Well, you know what he wanted to know? He said, well, God told me to destroy Sedom, but there's a guy Lot over there. Should I destroy Lot or not? Should I kill Lot or not? No. What do you have a question on that? When you have a question, there's two sides. What were the two sides of the angel's thought process? So the angel said like this, well, one side is, really Lot is really not worth too much. Lot wasn't such a great tzaddik. So really, there's no reason to save Lot for Lot. But from Lot comes Moab, and from Moab comes Ruth, and from Ruth comes King David, and from King David comes Mashiach. So, hey, there's something to talk about now. So maybe we should save Lot for what's going to come out of him. But if what comes out of him is not Jewish, so then you don't have to save Lot. But if what comes out of him is Jewish, then we save Lot. So really the question of the angel was, is Ruth, the convertess, going to become permissible and acceptable? If she is, then David is acceptable. Then I'll go save Lot. If she is not acceptable, then don't save Lot. And what does this depend on? Well, it all depends if the Moavi woman should have greeted the woman in giving them provisions. So the angels come to visit Abraham. The angel that went to destroy Sodom asks Abraham a question. Ayeh Sarah eshtecha. Where is Sarah, your wife? That wasn't a social question. That wasn't where's Sarah, your wife. That's a question like that you get punched in the face when you ask it. He was asking Abraham a deeper question that Abraham understood. Where is your wife Sarah? Which means, what is the role of woman? Which means, do they go out or they stay inside? The depth of that question, in the future when those Moavi women will not greet the Jewish women to give them food, are they innocent or guilty? Meaning, is Ruth permissible? Meaning, is David legal? Meaning, should I go save Lot? That's a deep question. Imagine that. Ayeh Sarah Eshtech and the whole around the world and back. Avraham Avinu understands the question, and he says, yes indeed, Hineh ba'ohel. Sarah's in the tent, and therefore it's the way of the woman to be inside. Therefore there's no claim against the Moavi woman for not going out. Therefore, if they convert, they're acceptable. Therefore Ruth is acceptable, David is acceptable. Go save Lot. That explains to me why he had to show up. That's why he had to come to Avraham Avinu's house. Because he needed to know this halachic ruling. Once he got the green light to go save Lot, he went to Sodom and he saved Lot. Now I understand another Gemara. The Gemara says in another place. Actually, before I go further, I don't know if you have Chumashim, maybe Shabbat, you look inside. When the angel asked Abraham, where's your wife? It says, Vayomeru elav. And they said to him, Ayeh Sarah eshtecha. Now, in my Chumash, on the word elav, to him, there's stuff going on over here. There's dots all over the place. There's dots on the letter Aleph, there's a dot. On top of the letter Aleph, there's a dot. On the letter Yud, there's a dot. And on the letter Vav, there's a dot. I don't know. What are these dots doing over here? So the rabbis tell us that the word can be read Elav, or just read the letters that have the dots on it. And that spells Ayo. What does the word Ayo mean? Where is he? So there's two questions here. One is Ayeh, with a Hey. Where is Sarah? But then the rabbis put dots on top of the letters to say there was another question. Not only where is she, but Ayo. Where is he? What does that mean? Based on what I'm telling you today, I understand what it means. That the angels were saying, where is she? Because based on where she is, that's where I'll understand where is he, which is Lot. Which means if I need to know what to do with Lot. So I need to know his status. His status is based on her status. So Abraham says, go save him. She's in the tent. The ladies of Moab will have no claim against them. Ruth is legal. David is legal. Go save him. We need Mashiach. So he asked, Ayeh, where is she? Ayo. Because I need to know where is he, where is Lot, what's the status of Lot. I'll tell you another Gemara. Because you're doing so well today. So you deserve another Gemara. True, I'm doing all the work, but you're listening. The Gemara says, when Mashiach comes, there's going to be a big kiddush. It's going to be on, let's say, Shabbat. Everybody's going to be invited. All the tzaddikim. And they're going to have a big feast and a seudah, whatever they're going to serve. They'll have food for everybody. They'll have Sephardi delicacies and Ashkenazi delicacies and all that stuff. Even though I'm sure that the Avot will prefer our delicacies, but that's because they came from the Middle East. It's from that area. The Avot were not from Europe. They were from Syria and that region. But leave that. I don't want to get onto that now. We'll see what the menu is when they get there. That's a side point. But it's going to be a big feast, whatever it is. And then they're going to get to Birkat HaMazon. And at Birkat HaMazon, the custom is to take a glass of wine, and whoever leads the Birkat HaMazon holds the cup of wine, and after Birkat HaMazon they make Borei Priya Gefen, and it's a good thing. So there's going to be so many tzaddikim over there at the party, so they're going to invite Avraham Abinu. Please, Avraham, lead us in the Birkat HaMazon. Here's the cup. And Avraham is going to say, thank you very much, but I'm not worthy of such a kavod. Because after all, I'm the father of Ishmael. You know, I did a lot of good, but I also brought the father of the Arab nations into the world. And you know all the troubles that they have brought to us. So, give it to somebody else. So, okay, we'll go to Yitzhak Abinu. So they go to Yitzhak, they say, Chavod Yitzhak, it'll be Yitzhak. The wine from Birkat HaMazon. He says, yes, well, I appreciate it, but after all, I'm the father of Esav. And Esav is the father of all the European nations, Rome. Although I contributed a lot of good to the world, but Esav is on my record, so I desist. So they go to Yaakov Avinu. Oh, Yaakov Avinu, all his children were perfect. He had 12 perfect tzaddikim, so you can't say that he had, some problem with his seed. He says, yeah, but I married 2 sisters. And the Torah really doesn't like that, although I did it before the Torah forbade it, but still, people will question me, who's he to make the Kiddush? He married 2 sisters. So, and they're going down the line, and every tzaddik gave an excuse why they shouldn't. This is just a side point. You see the nature of tzaddikim. They're not looking for kavod. They're not grabbing the cup and saying, oh, no, I want to make the beracha. No, somebody else who's better than me. But then something very, very strange takes place. They go to King David. He's there at the party as well. So they tell David, the kavod. So, Ani avarech, v'li na'eh levarech. I'll make the beracha, and I'm worthy to make the beracha. Oh, you're worthy to make the beracha. And then it says in the pasuk, David says, Kosh Yeshuot Esav. David predicted it. Kosh Yeshuot Esav. I'm going to lift the cup. So the rabbis say, why was David so confident that he should make the kiddush? So the rule, I'll teach you halakha now. When it comes to making this Birkat HaMazon with the cup, the normal law is the guest makes the Birkat HaMazon. You're learning something now. When you have a guest in the house, the law is that the host makes hamotzi, and the guest makes the Birkat HaMazon. Learn the law. Why do you think the host is the one that makes the hamotzi? Because he gives out the bread. So he can give the guest big pieces. But if the guest makes the hamotzi, he's embarrassed to take a big piece for himself. He's just going to take a little kizayit like this, and he's going to starve. So they give the host, you make the hamotzi, give everybody big pieces of bread. But when it comes to Birkat HaMazon, we want the guest to bless the host now for the good food. So you're in charge of Birkat HaMazon. So that's the guest makes the blessing. David HaMelech says, Rabotai, I'm the guest over here. Because all of you were born Jewish. But I came from the outside. My grandmother was a convert. So I'm a guest to the Jewish nation over here. So therefore, according to the law, Ani avarech, v'lina en avarech. It's worthy for me to make the blessing. And if somebody will ask, maybe I'm not legitimate? So David HaMelech says, no, I am legitimate. My grandmother is accepted. Because Sarah was in the tent. And therefore my lineage is pure. That's why David HaMelech says, Kosh Yeshuot Esa, I will lift the cup. The word Esa stands for Ayeh Sarah Ishtecha. Because that's the source where we learn that David is legitimate. He says, I will make the beracha. Because Ayeh Sarah Ishtecha. Because Sarah is inside the tent. Ani Yavarech. Velina El Yavarech. Oh. If that's true, we can explain something else here. That means this is an amazing story. This story over here of the Avraham Avinu and the guests was actually bringing us Mashiach, was legalizing King David, was preparing for us for the final redemption. Now watch what I'm going to say now. The holy books tell us that if you look in the beginning of the Parashah, it says like this, and Abraham was sitting at the opening of his tent. Listen to what I say. Yoshev Petach HaOhel. He was sitting at the opening of his tent. So the holy books say, Yoshev Petach HaOhel, Yud, Yoshev, Petach is a Peh, HaOhel is a He. It spells the word Yafeh. So they say, he was sitting in front of the tent, Yoshev Petach HaOhel, Yafeh. What does that mean, Yafeh? Yafeh, it's nice. What's nice? What do you mean it's nice? Everything's nice. I don't know if you're up to hearing something deep. If not, you could space out for a couple of minutes now. If you haven't been doing that for the past hour already. But I will share with you a secret. How am I going to tell this to you? There's a custom that we have when a bride and groom get married. So we bless them with all sorts of blessings. There's so many special blessings that are unique. They are custom made for bride and groom. One of those I learned from my rabbi. They used to tell Hatan v'Kala that the zivug, she'azivug ya'aleh yafeh. The zivug should be yafeh, should be nice, should be good. My rabbi once explained to me this. What do you mean, should be yafeh? So he said every morning we have a prayer that we say after Kiryat Shema. V'yatziv, v'nachon, v'kayam, v'yashar, v'ne'eman, v'ahuv, v'habib, v'nechmad, v'na'im, v'nura, v'adir, v'tukan, v'kubal, v'tov, v'yafeh. It's all blessings, and the last blessing is v'yafeh. So he said, we bless Hatam v'kala, shazivug ya'aleh yafeh means ad v'yafeh. It should reach up until the word yafeh. It should be yatziv, nachon, kayam, yashar, ne'eman, it should have all those 15 or 16 accolades. All the way until Yafeh. It's like one blessing that includes 15 blessings. That's a beautiful explanation. The explanation is Yafeh. But today I say something deeper. I always thought that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has many names. The name of God of mercy is Yud Kei Vav Kei, as you know, 26. And one of the names of God of judgment is Aleph, Dalid, Nun, and Yud, which equals 65. Mercy and judgment. 26 and 65. And I always told you, you never want to leave the judgment, because they could be damaging. So we want to take the merciful name of God and combine it to sweeten the judgment. So what the rabbis of the Kabbalah do is they take the holy name of Yud Kei Vav Kei and they somehow merge it together with the Aleph Dalet and the name of Nun Yud, that name over there. And they have a new name that has 8 letters. Yud Kei Vav Kei is 4 letters, Aleph Dalet is 4 letters. Actually, if you look over there on the board, you'll probably see that holy name. Let me see if I know what I'm talking about. Today, you have show and tell. You see? Yud, Ke, Vav, Ke, and Aleph, Dalet, Nun, Yud. You see it there? Okay, so I know what I'm talking about. So whenever you see that configuration, that's a sweetening of a judgment there. There's a reason why they put those 8 letters together. Because they don't want the Aleph, Dalet, Nun, Yud to stand alone. So they combine the... Just as a side point, Yud Ke Vav Ke is 26, and the other name is 65, which equals 91. 26 and 65 is 91. That's why they make such a big deal of answering Amen, because Amen also equals 91. Whenever you answer Amen, what basically you're doing is, you're sweetening the judgments. That God forbid, if there's judgments to come down, by answering Amen, you're making the judgment sweet. That's why the ladies have Amen parties and all these things that they're doing. It's a good thing. Certainly beats shopping, that's for sure. But it's a good thing on its own right. That's why Amen is so important. Anyway, what you might not know is that when Mashiach comes, I can't explain to you exactly why this is going to be yet, but when Mashiach comes, they say God's name, Yud Ke Vav Ke, is going to turn into Yud Ke, Yud Ke. It's the same letters basically, except the Vav is going to turn into a Yud. Instead of Yud He and Vav He, it'll be Yud He, Yud He. You ever hear the word Yehiye? That's going to be the holy name of God. As a matter of fact, there's a pasuk. Bayom Hahu Yehiye Adonai. Hashem is going to be Yehiye. It's going to switch, it's going to turn. Just accept it. So again, the name of God is going to be Yehiye, which is mercy. And it's going to mix up with the name of judgment. But Yehiye doesn't equal 26. Yehiye equals 30. Yud Ke is 15. Yud Ke is 15. So it's 30 plus 65 equals 95. So we're going to go from a combo of 91 to a combo of 95. That's why maybe you heard once, sometimes when the rabbis say a blessing, the people answer, Amen Selah. What does this Amen Selah mean? Amen equals 91. Selah equals 95. Which they're saying is that we want the Beracha to be from this world all the way till Mashiach comes. So we say Amen, which is this world 91. Selah, 95 till the end of time, till Mashiach comes. And that's what we bless the Hatam B'Kala as well. We say Shahzivug Ya'aleh Yafeh. Yafeh equals how much? Yud, Pe, He is 95. We're blessing that the marriage should last all the way until Mashiach. Until God's name will be Yafeh. Until it will equal 95. It should not only be in this world. It should be all the way it shouldn't be a short-lived marriage. It should be a long marriage. Ad Neve Yafeh. That's why we say, I'm thinking now, says Zivug Ya'aleh Yafeh. Ya'aleh is, it should equal. Ya'aleh. Kama Ze'oleh. How much does it cost? Ya'aleh Yafeh. It should be numerically Yafeh. It should get to the 95, which means to that future name. What does it have to do with this parasha? Now I understand very good what it has to do with it. Avraham Avinu was involved over here in a messianic situation. Should we save Lot? Lot has in him Ruth. Ruth has in him David, which is Mashiach. The whole question, where is Sarah, has to do with Lot, has to do with Mashiach. Hine ba'ohel. Yeah, ladies are modest. Ladies are modest. That means the Moabite woman, we're okay not to greet the woman. Therefore they can convert. Therefore Ruth is legal. Therefore her children are legal. That whole story, it's all about Mashiach over here. So now the Torah introduces the parasha. Vehu Yoshev Petach HaOhel. It's telling us where he was sitting. And the rabbis tell us Yoshev Petach HaOhel is Rashet Temot Yafeh. Because Yafeh is something to do with the Mashiach. Yafeh is 95. That's the name of God when Mashiach comes. And therefore the Torah is God's so merciful to us. When you read this parasha, you just see hospitality to be guests, steak, whatever, tongue with mustard, and running around giving them bread and all the things that it says. So the Torah wants to tip you off. Put on your glasses and look deeper into these parashiyot and you'll see messianic stuff. So how does it do that? Right in the beginning of the parasha it tells us he was sitting by the opening of his tent. And you read it, Yoshev Petach HaOhel. You see Yafeh. Oh, when you see Yafeh, you say, well, that's 95. Wait, 95 is Mashiach stuff. Must be the stuff with Mashiach over here. So the Torah is putting you on the path, right from the opening verse, to let you know that there's much more than meets the eye on this subject. Now, granted, this talk that I gave you today is a talk that I revisited, because I've said this talk many times, explaining this parasha. But being that my intention over Shabbat is to then explain this part B, I had to say part A first. The part that I'm going to say can only be said on Shabbat because it's very, very deep, and you need the Kiddushah of Shabbat and the special divine assistance that Shabbat gives us to succeed in saying the second part. But for a Thursday, this is definitely sufficient, what we accomplished here, explaining these Pesukim in a new light or in a new way. What do you take out of the class? Well, if you're a woman, certainly you should take out the importance of Siniut, which the conclusion of today's class really is that if it wasn't for Siniut, then Mashiach wouldn't be Jewish. That means the only reason why we're going to be redeemed is because Sarah was modest. Sarah's modesty allows the Moabi woman to stay at home, and therefore does not punish Ruth for conversion, and therefore makes David kosher. I can only imagine if the angels would have asked Abraham, where's Sarah? Oh, she's out gallivanting. Oh, she's out gallivanting. Oh, so therefore the woman outward. Therefore the woman should have went out and greeted the woman to give food, and they didn't. Therefore Ruth is illegal. Therefore David is illegal. Therefore there's no Mashiach. So ultimately Mashiach is a result of modesty. And it goes back to our question that we began last week. Where is the Mashiach? Why is it taking so long for this to happen? And now we see the reason. Because the modesty of the generation is so far away from its true place. Immodesty is the order of the day. There's a lot of promiscuity from many places where it comes from. And therefore this is definitely something, if as a woman, this is something you definitely can take out of the class. Leave all the esoteric stuff. But modesty will bring us the Mashiach. Now I'm not a policeman now going to tell you how much and how little and what and not. One lady once asked me, what's the laws? I think, in my personal opinion, a woman should know this naturally. Naturally you know what it means to be modest. That's a natural tendency to be modest. People know, for some reason, to always fixing themselves, because they know there's a certain natural understanding of what is considered modest behavior and not. So you don't have to open up the books to figure out what it is. Just go with the natural tendency what it tells. And then once you get to the natural, then we can tinker it with the books. But we don't have to get to the books yet. We're not even going according to nature. Being immodest is against nature. Being immodest is doing something that's against the natural tendency. It's natural to cover up. It's a normal thing. By men also, it's a natural thing. For animals, it's not natural. You'll never find a modest animal. For kids, it's not natural. Kid comes out of the bath, they run around the hallway. Because to a baby doesn't understand modesty yet, so therefore they can't figure that out yet. But an adult, you don't expect them to do that. They just know it's wrong. A child doesn't have the mind yet to understand that that's improper. But as you get older, you know that's not proper. Now, if that's not proper in your hallway, certainly it's not proper in the hallway of the public domain. Anyway, you got my point on that. That clearly tzniut weighs very large, weighs very heavy on the ultimate redemption. The Hazon Ish once said, the men, their primary vocation should be the study of Torah. That's what they're brought into this world to do. And the Hazon Ish would say that the Torah of the woman is modesty. You know, as important as Torah is to men, that's how important tzniut is to the woman. Tzniut is your Torah. A lady once asked me, and I'll conclude with this. She wanted a sigula, a certain charm for good luck. Everybody's looking for good luck charms. She thought maybe I had an extra red string in my pocket that she could put on her wrist, thinking that would do a lot good. Well, I should correct myself, that the red string definitely does bring good luck to the one that sold it to you. That's for sure. He's very lucky, because he makes a lot of money selling those red strings. That's for sure. So you can't say it doesn't bring good luck. It does bring good luck to somebody. But they wanted some sort of, charm, like a rabbit's foot, something like that deal. So I said, I'm going to give you the biggest good luck charm, more than any good luck charm that will bring you more beracha, and it won't cost you more than 2 pennies. More than 2 pennies? I happened to have one of my buttons of my suit had fallen off, and I took out of my pocket a button. Here's the best sigula for a woman. There's a button, which I put in my pocket, put in my wallet. No, put it on your dress. That's the best sigula. That's the biggest, more than any kamiya, more than any holy name of God, more than any Tehillim book, more than any other secretive, esoteric item. Your beracha is all in a button. And the more buttons you have, the more berachot you have. It sounds funny, doesn't it? But it's actually the truth. You don't need any more sigulot than that. And it doesn't mean only a button, it means a thread, or it means a zipper. It means any of the accessories that make the dress more modest. Baruch Hashem, I know I'm not talking to anybody in this room over here. Baruch Hashem, all of you are the righteous women of our generation, of our community, and you're all modest by nature as well. We're talking about what goes on outside the class. I'm not worried. That's the disadvantage of coming to class. The good people come to class and they get yelled at by the rabbi. And they say to themselves, hey, what are you yelling at us for? We came to class. Why don't you yell at them? It's easier to talk from this pulpit than to scream on the bench on Ocean Parkway. I'll conclude with this, that Be'ezat Hashem, we should be redeemed. We'll all be at that party, and when David HaMelech is going to pick up the cup of wine, you'll say, oh, the rabbi told us that, and look at that, it happened. And when it does happen, you'll have a big hand in it, because you're clinging to the tradition of the matriarch Sarah Imenu, Sarah Ba'ohen, the one that was in the tent, the one that maintained the level of great modesty. Amen.